Chapter 56 Acclaim Denied. Felmar glittered in the distance as the enchanted carpet dipped toward its gates. Astrid's eyes shone in awe at the sprawling city. Its towers of white stone, its bustling streets lit with lanterns, the banners of Gryffindor red and gold snapping in the wind. "Your hall is greater than any I dreamed," she whispered, clutching Harry's arm. "And soon mine too." Harry's stomach sank. He had warned her countless times on the journey, but she had only laughed, brushing aside every caution. When they landed in the courtyard of Gryffindor Castle, servants and guards bowed, and word spread quickly. Their king had returned. Lyanna was already hurrying down the steps with Sirius in tow. Relief shone in her eyes, until Astrid spoke. "I am Astrid," the girl announced boldly, stepping forward with pride. "Second wife of Harry Gryffindor." The courtyard went silent. Lyanna froze, her face draining of color. Slowly, her gaze turned to Harry, then back to Astrid. "What did you say?" Lyanna's voice was calm, too calm. Astrid, emboldened, lifted her chin. "Harry took me from another. By the laws of my people, that makes me his. Wife to wife, I stand before you." Lyanna's expression shattered. Hurt, anger, and disbelief collided all at once. Her eyes brimmed with tears even as her jaw clenched. "You!" She turned on Harry, her voice rising. "How could you? After everything? Is it because Rieger, after the shame I bore? Don't you want me anymore? Another girl? Younger? Prettier? Untouched?" Harry stepped forward quickly. "Lyanna, listen to me. It isn't like that. I didn't choose this. I saved her, and by her people's custom, she declared herself mine. I tried to leave her behind. I tried to explain, but Lyanna shook her head, trembling. "No, you've found someone better, haven't you? Someone not broken. Someone not ruined by a prince's folly." Her voice cracked. "And now I am to share you?" Harry's chest tightened. He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. "Lyanna, you know me, you know my heart. Saving her is not loving her. Do you not remember how I saved you once? From wildlings who would have taken you? Would you have had me turn my back on this girl now?" For a moment, Lyanna faltered. Her anger warred with her memory. He had saved her, and that had been the start of their life together. Yet the sight of Astrid, so young and bold, tore at the deepest wounds of her pride and fear. "No," Lyanna whispered, shaking her head fiercely. "I will not share. I will not have her near this castle. If you mean what you say, then send her away, or send me away." Harry closed his eyes briefly, steadying himself. Sirius clutched Lyanna's hand, looking up at his father with confusion and worry. "Mother, please," Sirius whispered. "Father wouldn't do that. He wouldn't hurt you." Harry met Lyanna's gaze. "You are my wife, Lyanna, my only wife. Nothing changes that. But I cannot cast Astrid into the snow to die. I will not. She will not stay in Gryffindor Castle if it wounds you so deeply, but I will find her a place, a safe place until I can untangle this." Lyanna's lip trembled, her fury softening into sorrow. "I don't want her here, Harry. Not near you. Not near us." Astrid, standing to the side, looked between them, her jaw set stubbornly. "I am his whether you will it or not. I will not be cast aside." The courtyard was thick with tension, the crowd watching with wide eyes. Harry raised a hand, silencing them. "This is not the place for this quarrel," he said firmly. "Astrid will not stay in this hall, but she will not be abandoned either. I will decide her place soon. For now, enough." He guided Lyanna inside, his heart heavy. He had faced White Walkers, slain them with steel and fire. But this battle, this wound between love and duty, felt far harder to conquer. It took days of careful words, patient explanations, and no small measure of authority before Harry finally persuaded Astrid to leave Telmar. She had clung fiercely to her claim, defiant in the face of Lyanna's fury, and more than once had to be reminded that the laws of Narnia were not the same as the customs of the Frostfang wilds. "No man in Narnia may claim a woman by force," Harry told her, his tone gentle but unyielding as they sat together in one of the castle's quieter halls. "Not even I. It is the law I swore to uphold. And if I bend it for you, then all I've built begins to crumble." Astrid's golden eyes burned with stubborn fire. "You saved me. You struck him down. That makes me yours. I will not forget it, Harry Gryffindor. And neither should you." Harry exhaled, tired but steady. "You are not mine. You are your own. But you will not be cast aside either. You will have a place and a life and perhaps, he hesitated, softening his tone. Someone who chooses you for who you are, not because of old customs that only bring pain. She said nothing, but her silence was laced with rebellion. It was agreed that Telmar was no place for Astrid. Its people were proud, wholly Narnian, and deeply bound to their ways. A wildling girl, loud, unbending, still smelling faintly of smoke and snow, would only clash with them. So Astrid was sent to Gnome City. Harry himself escorted her, the carpet swooping low over the clustered homes built into stone hills, their windows glowing with warm light. People were bowing respectfully to their king, their eyes curious as they studied the young wildling girl by his side. "This will be your new home," Harry said as they walked the narrow cobbled streets. "Here you will work. Here you will learn. The school kitchen always needs hands, and the cooks will teach you. Food, warmth, and honest labor. You'll have all of it." Astrid crossed her arms, lips pressed tight. "I did not ask for kitchens. I asked for you." Harry paused, turning to face her. "And I told you, Astrid, that cannot be. But here you will be safe. And more than that, you will be respected. These people will not treat you as a prize to be stolen. They will treat you as one of their own if you let them." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, grudgingly, she muttered, "We'll see." The women of Gnome City welcomed her warmly nonetheless, ushering her toward the school, chattering about food, hearths, and work to be done. Their kindness softened her scowl, though she refused to show it. When Harry left Gnome City, he sighed in relief for the first time in weeks. Astrid was out of the castle, out of Lyanna's sight, out of the storm she had brought crashing down around his family. He did not fool himself into thinking it was over. Astrid was stubborn, too stubborn to give up so easily. But for now, at least the law had been upheld. She had a roof, work, and people who would look after her. Perhaps in time she would learn the ways of Narnia. Perhaps she would even find someone else to love, someone who truly wanted her. Harry glanced southward as he guided the carpet back to Thelmar. "Perhaps," he murmured. But deep down, he knew. Astrid's fire had not been put out, only banked. Sooner or later, she would come back into his life, as fierce and unyielding as the northern winds. With Astrid settled in Gnome City and far from Gryffindor Castle, a new calm returned to Thelmar. Lyanna's shoulders seemed lighter, her eyes no longer clouded with doubt. She laughed more often, especially in Sirius's company, and Harry could feel the warmth in their home restored. It was not long before Lyanna and Sirius cornered him in the solar, eager for the story he had yet to tell. "Well?" Lyanna asked, settling across from him, her voice calm but expectant. "What did you find in the land of always winter?" Sirius leaned forward, eyes wide, barely able to sit still. "Did you really meet the children of the forest?" "Father, tell me everything. What do they look like? Do they speak like us? Can they use magic?" Harry chuckled, ruffling his son's dark hair. "One question at a time, Sirius. Yes, I met them. Yes, they spoke, and yes, they are powerful, though not in the ways men are. They are bound to the roots of the weirwoods, to the old magics of the land." Sirius's jaw dropped. "Why didn't you bring them back here? If the children of the forest stood with us, everyone would believe. The temples, the stories, it would make our faith unshakable." Harry stilled, Sirius's words striking deep. He had thought much the same on his way back, though he had been too consumed with survival and duty to act. "You're right," Harry admitted, his voice low. "It would have made everything stronger, more real, more undeniable. I should have invited them to Thelmar." He sighed, rubbing at his temples. "I'll make it right. I promise you, Sirius. We will go back together. We'll invite them ourselves." Sirius's face lit up like dawn. "Truly? You'll take me?" Harry smiled at his son's eagerness. "Yes, I'll take you. You deserve to see them with your own eyes." For now, Sirius's fascination shifted to the enchanted carpet. It had become more than a tool on Harry's northern expedition. Every mile flown had refined it. Every adjustment Harry had made during his journey had smoothed its movements, balanced its lift, and strengthened its runes. When Harry unrolled it again in the courtyard, Sirius's eyes gleamed with delight. "Can I?" he asked, his voice hushed with anticipation. Harry smirked. "Try." With surprising natural ease, Sirius guided the carpet into the air. The fabric hummed beneath him, rising smoothly as if it recognized his touch. He laughed, the sound carrying across the courtyard as the carpet soared higher, then dipped low in a playful swoop. Lyanna's hand flew to her mouth, her face pale. "Harry! He's fine," Harry assured her, though he kept a close eye on the boy. Soon Nina and Elsa were clamoring to join. Sirius beckoned them up, and the three children clung to the edges, shrieking with joy as the carpet swept over Thelmar's towers and circled above the harbor. Other children cheered from below, calling for their turn. By the time Sirius landed, his cheeks were flushed and his eyes sparkled brighter than the stars. "It listens to me, Father, as if it was made for me." Harry laid a hand on his shoulder, pride soft in his eyes. "Then it should be yours. The carpet belongs with the one who can fly it best." Sirius's mouth fell open. "Mine? Yes," Harry said with a nod. "A gift. Use it well and never carelessly." The boy hugged him tightly, words failing him. That night, Lyanna stood with Harry on the balcony, her gaze fixed northward. Her hand tightened on his sleeve. "You faced them," she whispered. "The White Walkers. You saw them with your own eyes." Harry nodded. "I did, and I killed them. They're not unstoppable, Lyanna. Fire and magic will end them. But there will be more," she said, her voice trembling. "And if they come south," Harry turned to her, cupping her face gently in his hands. "If they come, they will find me waiting. I will not let them touch Narnia, or you, or Sirius. You are my world, Lyanna. Nothing will happen to you. I swear it." Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled faintly, leaning into his touch. "You saved me once, and you've saved me again, tonight." Harry kissed her brow, his eyes hardening as he stared into the frozen dark beyond the wall. "Let them come. They will find this land defended." Chapter 57, The Call of Winterfell. The morning sun poured through tall stained-glass windows, spilling golden light across the great hall of Gryffindor Castle. It was one of Harry's proudest creations, a hall built in memory of the school that had shaped his childhood, yet crafted to serve a new world. For massive oak tables stretched the length of the chamber, their benches crowded with men, women, and children alike. Here, there were no divisions of rank. Apprentices sat beside stone masons, skin changers beside kitchen hands, Lyanna's voice mingling freely with that of the seamstress who had brought her bread. Even Harry himself took no special place. He sat with Lyanna and Sirius halfway down one of the tables, his cloak thrown loosely over his shoulders, a plate of steaming porridge and fruit before him. The hall was alive with sound, laughter, clattering dishes, the deep voices of men telling stories of quarry work, the high-pitched excitement of children comparing their lessons. The smell of roasted meat mingled with the sweet tang of honey cakes, and in every corner, warmth and life abounded. Harry watched it all with quiet satisfaction. "This is what I built for. A kingdom where no man or woman dines alone, where lords and common folk share the same fire." Lyanna smiled as Sirius eagerly traded bites of sausage with Nina, who sat across from him, while Elsa recounted a dream she had had about flying on the carpet. Then the sound of wings filled the hall. An owl swooped down through the high rafters, its feathers pale gray, its flight sure despite the din of the feast. It landed gracefully on the table before Lyanna, scattering crumbs, and held out its leg. The hall quieted slightly. Owls always carried news, and news was a thing of weight. Lyanna untied the ribbon and unfolded the parchment, her brow furrowing as she read. Sirius leaned forward, curiosity lighting his eyes. "Is it from Uncle Brandon?" he whispered. "Or Gnome City?" Harry asked, sipping his cup of steaming tea. Lyanna shook her head. "It's from Winterfell, from my kin." Her voice carried a note of surprise. Harry arched a brow. "Your brothers?" Lyanna's lips pressed together as she scanned the words again. "No, from my father." At the mention of Rickard Stark, the table around them hushed further. Even those who had no ties to the North knew the name of the Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North and Lyanna's father. Sirius tugged at her sleeve impatiently. "What does he say, Mother? What does Grandpa want?" Lyanna's voice softened, though her face was tight with emotion. "He writes of me, of us. He has heard rumors, strange stories drifting south, about wildlings disappearing, about a night watch members suddenly forgetting trails that they explored countless time. He fears something happening beyond the wall." Harry set down his cup slowly. "And what truth did you give him?" Lyanna folded the letter carefully, her hands trembling just slightly. "None yet. I never told him where Narnia is located, Harry. Not fully. Only how I am living. that I was safe. I wrote only that I am living in Narnia. The hall erupted into murmurs. Apprentices exchanged curious looks, builders frowned, and children whispered behind their hands. The idea of Winterfell, the ancient seat of the Starks, felt something happening, and now its lord had reached across the frozen miles to touch their lives. Lyanna's eyes shimmered, torn between pride and old excitement. He asks if I will come home. Sirius's fork clattered against his plate. Home? But this is home. Why would we leave? We built all this, didn't we, father? Harry put a steadying hand on his son's shoulder. This is home, Sirius. But Winterfell is your mother's home, too. Lyanna's voice shook with emotion. It's not that, my Benjen is getting married. My mother told me to look after him before she died. Harry exhaled slowly, his mind already racing through possibilities. Then perhaps it's time you go home and meet your family. The castle of Gryffindor was alive with activity that week, every hall echoing with the sound of boots, armor, and the chatter of apprentices carrying bundles of supplies. Lyanna's return to the north was no small matter. For the first time since she had fled, she would walk the halls of Winterfell again, not as a ghost in rumor, but as flesh and blood. Harry oversaw the preparations with his usual precision. Maps were unfurled on the war table, candles flickering over inked lines of sea routes and mountain passes. His eyes traced each carefully. You will first travel to Bravos, he explained, tapping the map. From there, take a ship to White Harbor. The Manderleys are loyal to your father. They will welcome you. From there, the road to Winterfell is well kept. Lyanna's face lit with something he had not seen in her for years, childlike excitement. White Harbor, it has been so long. And to see Winterfell again. Her voice softened. And Benjen's wedding, Harry, do you realize how wonderful this is? Daisy Mormont is Meage's daughter. Meage and I exchanged letters often, even when all else was silence. Benjen and Daisy, it's perfect. He will have a wife strong enough to keep him in line. Harry smiled faintly, though his eyes never left the map. Then it seems the North has some joy left to give you. Sirius bounced in his seat, barely able to contain himself. We're really going? To Winterfell? To see Uncle Benjen, and Uncle Ned, and Grandpa, and the Cripps? Lyanna laughed, ruffling his dark hair. Yes, little wolf. You'll meet your kin. They've only seen your face in portraits I've sent. Now they'll meet you properly. Harry's expression grew serious. That's why you must go, Sirius. They need to see you, to know you're real. But Harry's greatest concern was not excitement, but safety. He summoned 10 of his finest apprentices, young men and women he had trained himself from the earliest days of Narnia's rise. Each bore the gift of skin-changing, their animals at their sides as living extensions of their souls. Wolves, hawks, and even a massive bear answered their call. They stood before him in the great hall, clad in simple but sturdy armor. You will go with Lyanna and Sirius, Harry said, his voice carrying across the chamber. They are under your protection. You are not only swords and claws, you are eyes, ears, and shields. You are to see them safely to Winterfell and safely back. One of the apprentices, a tall boy with the calm eyes of a hawk, bowed his head. We will not fail you, master. Another, a girl with a wolf pacing at her heels, smiled faintly at Sirius. It will be an honor to guard you, young lord. Sirius puffed out his chest, pretending not to be flustered. I don't need guarding, but... Thank you. Harry chuckled, laying a hand on his son's shoulder. Even the strongest need companions. Sirius. Never forget that. That evening, Lyanna found Harry alone in the solar, adjusting the wards that would alert him if danger touched the Frostfangs. She slipped into the room quietly, her expression softer than it had been in weeks. You're not coming with us, she said, her voice low but steady. Harry looked up, guilt flickering across his face. No, I can't. The Watchers beyond the wall aren't gone, Lyanna. They wait, and I must be here to feel when they stir. If I leave, and they march, he shook his head. I can't risk it. Lyanna stepped closer, placing her hands on his. I know, I don't ask you to, but promise me this when you will come to Winterfell. You will meet my father and brothers, my family. Not as a man eloped with Lady Stark, but as the man I chose. Harry's green eyes softened. He kissed her brow, whispering, I promise. The harbor of Thelmar was alive with the creak of ropes and the crash of waves when a sleek Narnian-built ship slid into port. Word spread swiftly through the city. Brandon Stark had come. Though exiled from the north, Brandon was far from forgotten. He had carved a new life here, at the edge of the Antler River, building the city of Frostshield with his own hands and the loyalty of thousands who had followed him. Now, with the news of Lyanna's journey to Winterfell for Benjen's wedding, he could not stay away. Harry met him on the docks, the two clasping forearms with the respect of brothers. Brandon's dark hair was windblown, his cloak smelling faintly of salt and smoke. Behind him stood his wife, Barbara Riswell, her eyes sharp but kind, holding their infant son in her arms. "Lyanna," Brandon called as his sister approached, Sirius skipping at her side. "You'll not leave without me seeing you off. Not when our brother weds." Lyanna's eyes softened, and she embraced him tightly. "I thought you'd be buried in stone and timber at Frostshield. Yet here you are." Brandon chuckled. "Even exiles still have brothers, do they not? And if I cannot walk the halls of Winterfell, then let my steel and name travel there in my stead." Later, in the courtyard of Gryffindor Castle, Brandon unwrapped a long bundle bound in oiled cloth. One by one, he drew out the gifts. 2 swords, their steel gleaming, the hilts wrapped in leather dyed deep gray. "I forged these myself," Brandon said proudly, handing them to Lyanna. "Give them to Benjen. One for him, one for his bride. If I cannot stand at his side, let my work do so." Lyanna traced the blade with reverence. "They're beautiful, Brandon. He'll know it was you the moment he sees them." Harry, who had been watching quietly, smiled. "It's fitting. Steel forged by one brother, carried by another, given at the joining of 2 houses. That's a story worthy of the bards." That evening, Harry led Brandon and his family into a chamber where he kept one of his more beloved possessions, the camera. With a flick of his hand and the whisper of a spell, a strange box shimmered into existence. Light burst within it, freezing the family into a perfect image. Brandon, standing tall and proud, Barbara at his side with baby Richard cradled against her chest. Sirius clapped his hands in wonder. "It's like magic painted faster than a blink." "It is magic," Harry said with a small grin. He whispered again, and the image expanded, filling a canvas nearly as tall as the Sirius. The portrait shone with lifelike detail, as though the family might step out of it at any moment. Lyanna's eyes misted as she studied it. "When I take this to Winterfell, they will see you as you are now. Not as an exile, but as a husband and father. They'll see that you've achieved great deal, Brandon. You've built a life." Brandon's jaw tightened, though his eyes betrayed gratitude. "Then let them remember me that way." Sirius, meanwhile, was entirely taken with baby Richard. He leaned over the cradle, his green eyes wide with fascination. "He's so small," Sirius whispered. "Smaller than my arm. Does he do anything?" Barbara laughed softly. "He cries, eats, and sleeps. That's what little lords do at this age." Richard cooed, waving a tiny fist, and Sirius beamed. "I like him. When he's older, I'll teach him to fly the carpet." Brandon chuckled, ruffling Sirius's hair. "Careful, lad. At this rate, you'll have Richard believing he's half eagle instead of a Stark." Harry watched the exchange with quiet warmth. My son with a Stark babe in his arms. A moment of peace, even with war looming northward. That night, the great hall was filled with laughter and feasting. Brandon told stories of Frostshield, of people carving their underground halls, of builders raising towers taller than any in the north. Lyanna spoke of Winterfell, of their childhood beneath its gray walls. Sirius begged for tales of battles and wolves, and even Barbara shared a smile as she recounted Richard's first laugh. For a brief time, the burdens of exile and duty faded. They were simply family, together again in a hall of fire and song. And when the night drew long, Lyanna folded the portrait carefully into its frame. "When I walk into Winterfell," she whispered, "they will see you, Brandon, all of you, and they will know you are not lost." Brandon clasped her hands, his voice rough. "Tell them I am proud. Tell them I live well. And tell Benjen, I am with him in steel if not in flesh." Harry placed a hand on both their shoulders, his voice steady as stone. "It will be done." Chapter 58, The Golden Ship of Narnia. Braavos was never silent. Its harbors bustled at all hours with the cries of sailors, the splash of oars, and the creak of ropes heavy with trade goods. Ships of every shape and sail filled the waters. Narrow fishing boats, broad-bellied merchant cogs, and sleek galleys flying the banners of distant free cities. Yet even in such a place, spectacle still had the power to hush a crowd. When the Narnian ship appeared upon the horizon, the harbor fell into whispers. It was no merchant's vessel, larger than any ship that had docked in Bravos for decades. Its hull gleamed as though burnished by the sun itself. Golden husks curved along its sides like the ribs of some mythic beast, while gilded pillars rose from its decks, supporting carved arches and banners embroidered with the white dragon of Narnia. At a distance, it looked less like a ship and more like a floating palace, gliding serenely through the waters as if the sea bent itself to its will. "By the Titan's eyes," muttered a dockhand, his jaw slack. "That's no trader's vessel." "Nor a warship," said another, clutching his cap. It's a king's house sailing." Already the word spread. A Narnian ship had come, and with it someone of immense importance. The ship anchored, casting its shadow over half the port. The murmurs grew into shouts as sailors, merchants, and even curious guards abandoned their work to gather at the docks. Then, with a groan like thunder, a section of the hull opened outward. A great golden bridge unfolded, its surface etched with sigils that gleamed faintly in the morning light. It extended until it touched the harbor stone with a heavy clang. Gasps rippled through the crowd. From the mouth of the ship, warriors marched out first. 10 men and women in polished mail, their cloaks crimson and gold, swords and axes gleaming at their hips. Their steps were measured, their faces cold and proud, the kind of bearing that spoke of discipline drilled into the bone. And then she appeared. A woman stepped onto the golden bridge. Her dress was simple, a gown of dark gray wool, bound at the waist with a leather belt. Yet there was something in her bearing, something regal, commanding, that silenced the crowd in an instant. Her hair was black as a raven's wing, her eyes a stormy gray, and though her garments bore no jewels or embroidery, she radiated the aura of a queen unspoken. Beside her, holding her hand, strode Sirius Gryffindor, her young son. He wore a dark green tunic embroidered with a white dragon, a small silver dagger at his side more ceremonial than practical. Yet there was something striking about him, something sharp in his green eyes that made the Bravosi pause. The boy walked with the air of someone far older than his years, his head held high, utterly unafraid of the crowd that pressed to see him. "Gods," someone whispered. "She is like the old Valyrian statues come to life." But it was not only her presence that turned heads. 2 massive wolves padded at their side, their paws striking the golden bridge with heavy thuds. They were nearly as large as horses, their shoulders broad, their eyes bright and keen. The moment their claws touched the harbor stone, they lowered their heads, scanning the crowd with unblinking suspicion. Their hackles bristled, their bodies tense with protective purpose. "Dire wolves?" an old Bravosi murmured, his voice shaking. "The legends, they are real." The crowd recoiled, awed and terrified in equal measure. Lyanna Stark, once thought lost to the north forever, stood tall at the harbor, with her son Sirius clinging to her hand and the direwolves flanking her like shadows made flesh. More followed, apprentices clad in traveling armor, each bearing the mark of Narnia upon their cloaks. 10 of them, warriors all, their eyes watchful, their movements sharp. Each bore an animal at their side. A hawk perched on a shoulder, a fox weaving between boots, a black bear lumbering behind like a sentinel. The people of Bravos gaped. Skin changers, they thought. The old magics walk again. Behind them came attendants carrying trunks, casks, and bundles. Gifts, supplies, and food enough to sustain a small army. 40 in total stood with Lyanna, Sirius, and the wolves when the bridge was withdrawn and the golden ship pushed back to sea, its sails catching the wind as it slipped away. The crowd erupted in shouts and questions. Who is she? Is this the Queen of Narnia? Why come to Bravos with wolves and steel? The guards in purple cloaks approached cautiously, their spears lowered. But the wolves growled low, sending a shiver through the stone beneath their paws. The guards froze, unsure whether to advance or bow. Lyanna raised her chin, her voice steady, clear enough to cut through the noise. "I am Lyanna Gryffindor of Narnia," she said, "daughter of Winterfell, daughter to Lord Stark. I come seeking passage to White Harbor." The crowd erupted again, but now the awe was tinged with reverence. For in that moment, no one doubted her. The wolves, the warriors, the golden ship, all declared her words as truth. And Bravos, city of coin and shadows, bent to listen. Word of the golden Narnian ship had already spread through every canal and alley of Bravos by the time Lyanna and Sirius stepped onto the harbor stones. People jostled for a glimpse of the direwolves. Merchants whispered about the fortune Narnia must command, and whispers raced ahead like wildfire. The Queen of Narnia, daughter of Winterfell, is here. But it was not only common folk who came. Keyholders of the Iron Bank, richly cloaked magisters, and merchant princes left their counting halls to see for themselves. Each one of them knew what it meant for Narnia to send such a vessel, not trade but power. Pushing through the crowd came Orlino, Narnia's agent in Bravos. A sharp-eyed man with a neatly trimmed beard and robes of dark silk. He was nearly breathless as he reached the dock. "My queen, young prince." He bowed deeply, his hand pressed to his chest. "Word of your arrival reached me too late, else I would have cleared the entire dock. Forgive me." Lyanna's lips curved faintly. "No forgiveness is needed, Orlino. We are here safe, and that is enough." Sirius grinned. "Besides, I rather like the crowd. They look at us as if we stepped out of a song." Orlino's gaze flicked to the direwolves, then back to Sirius with a wary smile. "Aye, young lord. Songs indeed." Before Orlino could speak further, several richly dressed men stepped forward. One bowed low, a chain of gold heavy on his chest. "My lady, my lord," he said smoothly. "I am Calvados, keyholder of the Iron Bank. Allow me to offer you the hospitality of my house. It would honor me beyond words." Another magister quickly interjected. "My house is larger and more fitting. Queen Lyanna, please accept my roof. You and your son will have all comforts." Lyanna's gray eyes flicked between them, her expression polite but unreadable. She had grown up amidst the politics of Winterfell, and she recognized the same hunger here, the hunger to be first in Narnia's favor. The murmurs stilled as a group of finely robed men in blue and silver approached. They wore circlets of hammered steel and bore the sigil of the Sea Lord of Bravos. The crowd bowed their heads, for no one ignored the Sea Lord's will. The eldest stepped forward, his voice resonant. "Queen Lyanna, young prince, our master, the Sea Lord, has heard of your arrival and bids me offer his hospitality. His palace awaits you, its doors open, its tables laden. He commands no less than this, that the guests of Narnia rest under his roof." A hush fell. Even the keyholders stepped back, their lips pressed thin with frustration. No one contested the Sea Lord. Lyanna inclined her head, her hand resting lightly on Sirius's shoulder. "Tell your master that I am honored by his offer, and I accept," she said with calm grace. "But remember, I am not your queen. I am only a wife, a mother, and a sister returning home. All else is Narnia's work, not mine." The envoy bowed deeply. "Even so, my lady, Bravos honors you." Behind them, the 40 Narnians who had accompanied Lyanna and Sirius stood in disciplined silence, their armor catching the sunlight, their beasts pacing restlessly at their sides. Their presence was impossible to ignore. An army in miniature, standing guard in a foreign city. The Bravosi looked on in awe and unease. A boy walking beside wolves. A woman who carried herself like a queen yet denied the title. And behind them, warriors whose loyalty burned in their eyes. Orlino leaned close to Lyanna as the Sea Lord's men prepared to escort her. "Do you see, my lady? They clamor for you. Every guild, every keyholder, even the Sea Lord himself. Bravos would bend its knee if Narnia so much as whispered." Lyanna's eyes flicked to Sirius, who was staring wide-eyed at the canals and the domes glittering in the distance. She smiled faintly. "Then let them whisper. My son will remember this day." Every shipowner in Bravos wanted to be the one to carry her. Merchants in silk barged into Orlino's chambers, bowing low. "Take my galley, my lady," one insisted. "The fastest oars in the narrow sea." Another offered with pride. "My carrack has cabins fit for queens. You and your son will lack for nothing." But Lyanna, wise in her caution, accepted none of them at once. She listened, weighed, and deferred the choice to Harry's instructions already set. Sirius, of course, was fascinated. He pressed his nose against windows to watch the ships line up in the harbor, each one with its banners flying, each one vying for their notice. "They're all fighting over us," he whispered to his mother. "Is this how kings feel every day?" Lyanna gave him a long look, both amused and weary. "Kings rarely feel anything serious. They learn to wear masks instead." Far to the south, King's Landing was no less busy. The Red Keep bustled with activity as servants carried trunks, silks, and casks down to the waiting ships in Blackwater Bay. The royal family was preparing for a journey northward. The children were alight with excitement. Prince Viserys, still little more than a boy, dashed through the halls of Red Keep, declaring he would see snow for the first time. Princess Rhaenys, lively and sharp-eyed, was already pestering her handmaidens with questions about Winterfell and the wolves of the Starks. Prince Aegon, though still young, was equally eager. In her chambers, Queen Elia Martell sat watching her ladies fold silks into chests, her expression drawn and weary. "Do we truly need to go?" she asked, her voice edged with fatigue. "This is the wedding of the youngest Stark son. Courtesy event, nothing more. Must the entire royal household march north for such a thing?" Rhaegar Targaryen, her husband and king, stood by the window, his long silver hair catching the sunlight. He did not look at her when he answered. "They sent me an invitation," he said simply. Elia's brow furrowed. "A courtesy, Rhaegar, nothing more. They cannot expect the king to trouble himself with such matters. Let us send envoys, lords and ladies enough to flatter them." Rhaegar turned then, his violet eyes calm but unyielding. "I am going north, with or without you." The chamber fell silent. The sound of servants packing seemed distant. Elia stared at him, her lips pressed thin. She had known, the moment he received the parchment, that his mind would not be swayed, and she also knew there was no changing it now. Her hands curled tightly in her lap. "Then I suppose I must go as well, for appearances if nothing else." Rhaegar's gaze softened slightly, though he did not speak. He returned to the window, looking northward as though he could already see Winterfell's towers rising out of snow. Elia lowered her eyes to her children, who were laughing and chasing one another between the trunks. She sighed. A journey north. But for what purpose? Chapter 59, The Wolf Queen Returns. There were stories sung in every tavern from King's Landing to the Titan's Shadow. The tale of the Wolf Maiden, they called it. A song of a northern lady who forsook her betrothed, a great lord of storm and fury, to flee with a nameless common man. Minstrels in gilded halls told it as tragedy. In the streets, beggars sang it as romance. And all agreed on one thing. Lyanna Stark had vanished, her life ending in whispers and rumor. But now the songs had changed. The same tongues that once mocked her now trembled to speak her name. She lives, not as some fallen girl hidden in a tower, but as Lyanna Gryffindor, queen of a land beyond the known maps, wife to a powerful king, mother to a boy whose eyes gleamed like emerald fire. The girl they had once pitied had returned a legend. In Braavos, news spread faster than wind on water. By the second day, painters were sketching her likeness in the plazas. Merchants whispered that she had arrived on a ship made of gold. Priests of the many-faced god murmured that she carried an aura untouched by death itself. Every noble house sought her favor. Every merchant dreamed of trade with Narnia, the kingdom that had grown rich from crafts and business. That evening, the Sea Lord of Braavos himself held a feast in her honor. The grand hall of his palace shimmered with candlelight reflected in pools of still water. Perfumed braziers filled the air with sandalwood and myrrh. Every noble in the free city attended, and every eye turned when she entered, Lyanna Gryffindor, dressed in silver-gray silk embroidered with the gray wolf, her hair braided with moonstone. Sirius walked beside her in a green tunic lined with gold, his small hand clutching hers, his expression as steady as his father's. Behind them trailed her Narnian guard, their cloaks a moving river of scarlet and bronze. The Sea Lord rose from his seat and bowed. "Lady Lyanna of Narnia, daughter of Winterfell, Braavos is honored." Lyanna inclined her head gracefully. "And Narnia is grateful for your welcome, my Lord Sea Lord. You honor not only me, but the house of my birth, and the house I have built." Wine was poured, music swelled, conversation rippled through the hall. One merchant, flushed with courage and drink, dared to approach. "My lady, is it true you once fled a lord for love of a common man?" Lyanna's smile was faint, but her eyes glinted like steel. "If that is the song you choose to believe, sing it. But remember, songs are for men who watch life from afar. I lived mine." The hall went quiet for a heartbeat. Then laughter and applause followed, admiration spreading through the crowd. As the evening went on, Sirius explored the edges of the feast, marveling at the Braavosi fashions and the masks some guests wore. A magister knelt before him, offering a sweet shaped like a lion. "You are the Prince of Narnia?" he asked softly. Sirius tilted his head, thinking, "Father says I'm not a prince. He says I'm just Sirius." The man chuckled. "Then just Sirius must already be a name to fear, if even the wolves follow you. From across the room, the two dire wolves lay near Lyanna's seat, their golden eyes watchful. That night, minstrels performed again. But the tune had changed. No longer was Lyanna the foolish girl who ran from her fate. She was now the Wolf Queen, the woman who defied her fate and returned crowned in her own right. And in every verse, the singers spoke of her son, the boy with eyes like spring leaves and wolves for shadows, the air of magic and winter alike. Sirius fell asleep on her lap before the song ended, and Lyanna stroked his hair gently, half smiling, half lost in thought. "Let them sing," she murmured to Orlino as the final notes faded. "They finally sing the truth, or something close to it." Orlino bowed. "Bravos remembers greatness when it sees it, my lady." Lyanna looked toward the dark sea beyond the open balcony. "Then let them remember, for soon we sail home." Morning light streamed through the latticed windows of Orlino's mansion, a sprawling estate of marble courtyards and silk-draped halls that overlooked one of Bravos's smaller canals. The faint scent of jasmine drifted through the rooms, mixed with the faraway clatter of gondoliers calling to one another. Lyanna woke to the quiet murmur of servants already at work, while Sirius still slept beside her on the cushioned bench near the window, one arm draped over the gray fur of a dozing direwolf. For the first time in many days, peace felt almost ordinary. This mansion, like much of Bravo's, was the work of wealth and patience. Orlino's banners, deep red trimmed with gold, hung from the balconies, and everywhere there were signs of prosperity. Fine tapestries, silver lamps, and murals painted by associate artists. Orlino himself was waiting in the dining hall when Lyanna entered, his beard neatly trimmed, his violet robe heavy with embroidery. "My queen," he greeted warmly, rising from his chair. "You honor my table again this morning. The boy sleeps well." Lyanna smiled faintly. "He dreams of snow, I think. He misses home." "Home," Orlino echoed, pouring her tea. "A word that means many things. For me it is Bravos, and for that I must thank you and King Harry. Without Narnia, I would have died like a common librarian. Now," he spread his hands, chuckling. "2 mansions, 2 wives, 3 ships, and a warehouse full of Narnian fire whiskey. Old age, it seems, agrees with me." Lyanna laughed softly. "You've done well, Orlino. You earned every bit of it." The morning meal passed with easy conversation. Sirius soon joined them, hair tousled, rubbing his eyes but alert the moment he saw the platters of sweet bread and fruit. "Good morning, Orlino," he said with boyish cheer. "Mother says you own half of Bravos." "Not half," Orlino said with mock solemnity. "Only the parts that make money." Sirius grinned. "Father would like you." Lyanna looked between them, amused. "He already does, though he hides it behind gruff words and letters full of business figures." When the laughter faded, Orlino's tone grew serious. "I have arranged everything for your voyage, my lady. The ship's sea maiden waits in the harbor. Her captain is one of mine, loyal and discreet. You'll sail with the tide tonight." Lyanna nodded. "You've done more than I could ask, Orlino. You always have." The old man leaned forward. "There are still those who would pay dearly to know where you are. I have made certain their eyes turn elsewhere. No word of your stay here will leave Bravos." "Good," Lyanna said softly. "Harry trusted you for a reason." Orlino hesitated, then spoke again. "Let me come with you, then, or at least take 50 of my guards. The narrow sea is not kind to travelers, even royal ones." Lyanna shook her head gently. "You have your duties here. Your merchants need you, and Bravos needs a man who speaks for Narnia when Harry cannot. I have enough protectors, 10 skin changers and 30 soldiers besides. You would only add to the attention I wish to avoid." Orlino sighed but bowed his head. "As you command, my lady. But I will not rest until I hear word of your safe landing at White Harbor." As the sun dipped low, the mansion's courtyard filled with the quiet hum of preparation. Servants carried trunks, and the Narnian guards inspected weapons and beasts. Sirius ran from one end of the courtyard to the other, excitement spilling from him like light. Orlino stood at the gate, watching them with fondness. "I remember when I first saw you, my lady," he said. "A young woman who have a greater purpose, even when she was a nothing. And now look at you. The songs in Bravos speak your name again, but this time, they sing it with pride." Lyanna smiled, though there was a glint of melancholy in her eyes. "I'll feel at peace only when I see the towers of Winterfell again." Sirius tugged at her sleeve. "We'll come back, won't we? After we visit grandfather. Perhaps, she said, brushing a stray lock of hair from his face. But first we go home. Orlino bowed low, his voice thick with emotion. Then may the winds favor your sails, my lady, my lord. Lyanna took his hand and squeezed it gently. You've done more for us than most kin ever did, Orlino. Never doubt that Harry and I are grateful. The old man smiled through moist eyes. And I am grateful for the life you gave me. By moonrise, the Sea Maiden slipped from Bravos' harbor. Lyanna stood on deck beside Sirius, the two direwolves resting at their feet. The lights of the Titan burned in the distance, and beyond it lay the endless black of the sea. Goodbye, Bravos, Sirius murmured. Lyanna looked back at the city that had sheltered her, at the glow of Orlino's mansion high above the canal, and whispered, Goodbye, old friend. The ship turned westward, its sails catching the wind. Ahead lay White Harbor, and the north she had not seen for a long time. The Sea Maiden cut through the water like an arrow of polished oak and gold. The narrow sea was notorious for its dangers. Pirates of the Stepstones, raiders from the Three Sisters, even rogue sailors who preyed on merchant ships. But fortune favored them. For 5 calm days, the winds held steady and no black sails appeared on the horizon. Lyanna stood on the quarterdeck each morning, her hair whipping in the sea breeze, eyes fixed westward. Thor smiles on us, she murmured more than once. No storms, no blood. Sirius leaned over the rail beside her, watching dolphins race the ship's prow. So that's the sea of my grandfather's tales, he said. It doesn't look so dangerous. Lyanna smiled faintly. The sea can change its face quicker than men can draw breath. Never trust calm waters, my son. But calm they remained. By dawn of the 6th day, the smell of pine and cold earth reached them, and before noon, the white stone towers of White Harbor rose from the mist. After 5 long years away, Lyanna Stark set foot once more in the north. The docks were busy even in the chill of morning. Fishmongers shouted prices, gulls screamed overhead, and the banners of House Manderley rippled above the harbor walls. When the Sea Maiden glided to the quay, its Narnian flag drew stares at once. No Narnian ship in living memory had come to White Harbor with sails woven in gold thread and figureheads shaped like dragons. Curiosity turned quickly to fear when the direwolves bounded down the gangplank. The beasts were massive, shoulders as high as a man's chest, eyes burning amber in the gray light. Their low growls rolled across the stone pier like thunder. 7 save us, someone whispered. Direwolves, real ones. Panic spread among the dockworkers. Men stumbled back, dropping ropes and barrels. Children cried out. Then the city guard came running. Dozens of men in green and blue livery, steel drawn and shields raised. Hold! Their captain barked. Step away from the beasts. The skin changers of Narnia moved just as swiftly. 10 of them fanned out around Lyanna and Sirius, their own companions. Hawks, foxes, wolves, and a black bear, emerging from cages and shadows to stand ready. The air hummed with tension. Sirius pressed closer to his mother, eyes wide but unflinching. Mother! Lyanna raised a hand. Stay behind me. The direwolves bared their fangs, a low snarl rising from deep in their throats. Across from them, the Manderley soldiers hesitated, knuckles white on sword hilts. One wrong move and the dock would erupt in blood. The captain of the guard swallowed hard, taking a cautious step forward. State your name, stranger. What business brings you to White Harbor with monsters at your heels? Lyanna's voice cut through the noise, calm and clear. I am Lyanna Gryffindor, daughter of Winterfell, daughter to Lord Rickard Stark, wife to Lord Harry Gryffindor of Narnia. These are my protectors, and this, she laid a steady hand on Sirius's shoulder, is my son. The words struck the dock like a bolt of lightning. Murmurs rippled through the ranks of soldiers. A few men even lowered their blades. Lyanna Stark? The captain breathed. Sirius frowned. Don't act like you knew her before. Call someone who might recognize her. The captain blinked, taken aback by the boy's words. Lyanna's lips curved in the faintest smile. A horn sounded from the harbor wall, and moments later, riders appeared. Manderley men in silver armor, bearing the sigil of the merman. At their head rode Ser Wylus Manderley, the Lord's heir. He reined in hard at the sight before him. The wolves, the soldiers, the glittering ship behind them. What in the gods' names? He began, but then his eyes met Lyanna's. He froze. My lady, it is you. Lyanna inclined her head. It has been long, Ser Wylus, But yes, it is I. Wyllis dismounted at once, dropping to one knee. Forgive us, Lady Lyanna. We did not know you were coming. She stepped forward, resting a hand lightly on his shoulder. I am here for my brother's marriage. The tension broke like a snapped bowstring. Soldiers sheathed swords. Dockhands slowly returned to their work. The direwolves lowered their heads but kept watchful eyes on the crowd. Sirius looked up at his mother, relief bright in his face. Does this mean we're really home? Lyanna gazed at the gray northern sky, at the gulls wheeling above the white towers. Her voice was soft but sure. Yes, Sirius, this is also home. And behind them, the waves of the narrow sea lapped gently at the hull of the Sea Maiden, as if sealing the long journey with a whisper. Chapter 60 The Wolf Queen Returns. By the time the Sea Maiden dropped anchor in White Harbor, word had already begun to spread across the north like wildfire on dry pine. Lyanna Stark is back. Alive, and more than that, she was no mere lady in exile or hermit beyond the sea. She had a throne of her own. Every hall from Barrowton to Deepwood Motte hummed with the news. Maesters carried ravens with sealed letters, and travelers brought rumors thicker than snowflakes in winter. She had written to her brothers, to her father, and even to a few old friends from in the north. And as every lord and lady in the north read those letters, one thing became clear. Lyanna Stark was not some lost fool or vanished maiden. She was a queen, but the mystery of her new home only deepened the fascination. No map showed Narnia. No sailor could say exactly where it lay. Yet its ships were seen in every great port of Essos, painted in white and black, crewed by pale men and women who spoke the mix of Essosi and common tongue. Narnia's influence was vast. Their merchants brought rare steel, clear glass, and fine fabrics that shimmered like liquid light. Their gold flowed through the free cities, buying favors, ships, and silence. And now the secret was out. The Queen of Narnia was a Stark of Winterfell. Lords across the narrow sea sent letters to the north, hoping to gain trade or alliances through Winterfell, but none received replies. Only one lord in all Westeros had ever traded directly with Narnia, Rickard Stark. For years, ships had arrived quietly at White Harbor under Manderly's protection, bearing gifts and goods from the east. Blades that never dulled, spices unseen in the Seven Kingdoms, and barrels of fire whiskey that warmed body even in the coldest blizzard. Few questioned it at the time. Now all understood. Winterfell's silent connection to that strange, distant kingdom had not been mere trade. It was blood. Flashback start. Lord Wyman Manderly himself nearly choked on his breakfast porridge when he heard Lyanna is the Queen of Narnia from his spy in Bravos. By the gods! He wheezed to his son Wyllis, slamming a meaty hand on the table. The Queen of Narnia, Rickard's own daughter, is standing in my harbor, and I've no feast ready to greet her? She came unannounced, father, Wyllis replied, trying not to laugh. No ravens, no warning. Only the captain's report that she travels with wolves the size of horses. That's no excuse. No northern lord will say that House Manderly failed to welcome a northern queen. He turned to his servants with urgency rarely seen in White Harbor. Send word to the kitchens, fresh bread, meat pies, roast mutton, everything we have. Fetch the musicians, the banners, the silver goblets. The feast must be ready before she reaches the gates. The servants scattered, half in panic, half in excitement. Within the hour, White Harbor began to transform. The streets were swept clean, banners hung from every tower, and the scent of roasting meat filled the air. Flashback and when Lyanna rode through the city gates later that day, Sirius by her side and the direwolves padding silently at her heels, the entire harbor had gathered to see her. The Manderly Guard flanked her escort, their armor shining under the pale northern sun. The crowd parted in reverent silence. For most, she was a legend made flesh. The lost wolf maid returned, crowned with dignity instead of sorrow. Lord Wyman himself stood at the steps of his great hall, his face red with excitement and tears in his eyes. My Lady Lyanna, he boomed, dropping to one knee despite his girth. House Manderly welcomes you home, and all White Harbor with it. Lyanna dismounted gracefully and took his hands. Lord Wyman, your welcome warms the heart. It has been long since I walked northern soil. And the north is better for it, my queen, Wyman said, voice trembling with emotion. Sirius blinked up at him curiously. You don't have to kneel, he said simply. Father says you only kneel in front of the gods. Wyman chuckled, rising with effort. Then your father is a wise man, young lord. You have your mother's courage, I see. Lyanna smiled faintly. He has his father's stubbornness too. Laughter broke the tension, and the gates of New Castle opened wide. As Lyanna and Sirius stepped inside, the banners of House Stark and House Manderly fluttered side by side, and above them, a new standard, red and gold with the Gryffindor lion, snapped in the northern wind. The Queen of Narnia had returned to the north, and the north was ready to honor her as one of their own. Lord Wyman Manderly was not a man easily astonished, yet the day Lyanna Stark walked into his hall with wolves at her side, the old lord felt the ground shift beneath him. He had welcomed kings and envoys before, but never a legend. After the initial greetings and feasting, he could barely contain his curiosity. When the musicians fell silent and the servants withdrew, Wyman leaned forward on his cushioned chair, his pale eyes fixed on Lyanna. "Forgive an old man's nosiness, my lady, but tell me, why now? After all these years, why return to the north?" Lord Manderly asked. Lyanna smiled faintly. "For the same reasons any woman returns home, Lord Wyman. To see my kin. My brother Benjen weds soon, and I would not have the last Stark son married without me there to witness it. I came to share his joy, and to remind my family that I have not forgotten where I was born. A wedding, then, and perhaps more. Winterfell will rejoice to see you. Gods, the songs they'll write." Lord Manderly looked excited. The lord's laughter boomed through the hall, though his mind was already turning like the gears of a clock. A queen of a wealthy realm here in my hall. He imagined Narnian ships docking in his harbor, casks of fire whiskey stacked beside barrels of salted fish, gold flowing through Manderly coffers. A single parchment signed in her name could change the fortune of his house forever. "My lady, forgive my boldness, but a trade accord between White Harbor and your kingdom would benefit both our peoples. Narnian steel for northern furs, fire whiskey for grain. The sea could bind our houses tighter than any treaty." Wyman Manderly asked, full of hope at the prospect of prosperity to his house. "We can speak of it at Winterfell, Lord Wyman. I do not come as a queen today, but as a sister returning home." Lyanna looked every bit like a queen. Still, the promise in her words made his heart pound. Lyanna did not linger in White Harbor. The sea voyage had been long, and her heart yearned for the cold air and gray stones of home. Wyman tried to persuade her to rest, but she shook her head. "Each hour I spend here, Winterfell waits. My family waits. I must go." The lord frowned, stroking his beard. "Then you shall not go alone. The road to Winterfell is long, and I would not have the wolves of the sea reach the wolves of the snow unguarded. I'll send 100 of my best men. Swords, archers, riders, all loyal Manderly blood." Lyanna tried to reject the offer. "Lord Wyman, that is too much. I already have my own guards, trained soldiers from Narnia. We can manage the road." "Too much," he bellowed. "Nothing is too much for a Stark. You'll take my men, or I'll ride with you myself." And so it was settled. Wyman Manderly, round, red-faced, and determined, declared he would accompany her to Winterfell. The news spread quickly, and preparations began at once. To honor her station, the Manderlys brought out one of their finest treasures, a carriage carved from white oak, its panels etched with silver inlays of leaping fish and roaring lions, draped in blue silk. "Fit for a queen and her young prince," Lord Manderly said proudly. But when the time came to depart, Lyanna and Sirius refused. The courtyard was crowded. Guards in Manderly green and blue, servants, sailors, and half the city's folk pressed against the gates to glimpse her one last time. Then gasps rippled through the crowd as Lyanna stepped toward her direwolf. The beast stood massive and proud, its fur like gray snow, its eyes gleaming gold. A Narnian skin-changer knelt to fasten a saddle of black leather and gold-threaded straps upon the wolf's broad back. Another carried a smaller seat for Sirius, fixing it securely on the other direwolf. "My lady," he said, aghast. "Surely you will not," Lord Wyman began, but Lyanna cut him off in mid-sentence. "Surely I will." There is no argument after that. Sirius grinning as he climbed up on his direwolf. "Father said it's safer than any carriage." The direwolves gave a low, rumbling growl, not of anger, but of readiness. Wyman Manderly could only stare, mouth open in wonder. And then it happened, something the people of the North would tell their grandchildren for generations. The gates opened, and Lyanna Stark Gryffindor rode forth astride her direwolf, her dark hair streaming behind her like a banner, her son riding beside her, fast and laughing. The 100 Manderly guards followed, their armor shining in the pale light, but all eyes were fixed on her. An old woman in the crowd whispered, tears in her eyes. The wolf kings of old rode like that, when the world was young. I never thought to see the day. From the walls of White Harbor to the fields beyond, the cry spread, the Wolf Queen, and as the hoofbeats and pawprints faded northward, Lord Wyman Manderley wiped his eyes and laughed. By the gods, he said softly. The songs will never be the same again. The journey from White Harbor to Winterfell was long, but the road stretched open and welcoming before them, blanketed by fresh snow that glittered beneath the pale sun. Lyanna led the company from the front, her dark hair whipping in the cold wind as she rode astride her direwolf. The creature moved with a regal stride, silent and sure-footed over the frozen earth. Behind her came the banners of House Manderley and the Narnian escort, two worlds marching together under one banner of wolf and dragon. Lord Wyman Manderley rode a sturdy mare, wrapped in furs and muttering between gasps of breath. God's woman, I've seen men half my weight collapse after a single mile, and here you are, riding that beast like it was born for you. Lyanna smiled faintly without turning back. It was, and so was I. Wyman chuckled, shaking his head. You Starks are mad. No wonder the songs never die about your lot. Sirius, riding the second direwolf beside his mother, grinned. Father says songs only last if you do something worth singing about. A wise man, your father, Wyman said, smiling. But I hope he also said a man should rest once in a while. He did, Sirius replied innocently. But he never follows his own advice. The Manderley lord laughed, the sound booming across the cold air. The Narnians who came with Lyanna were unlike any soldiers the North had seen. Their discipline was eerie, silent, focused, their beasts moving as if bound to their souls. Each of the 10 skin changers carried chests filled with gold, weapons, and gifts for Benjen's wedding. Even their wagons seemed full of gifts, moving smoother than any northern wheel should over the icy ground. At night, when they made camp, the difference between the two groups showed most. The Manderley soldiers built rough fires and simple shelters. The Narnians, however, raised smooth black tents stitched with golden thread that shimmered under torchlight, their blades polished until the flames danced across the steel. It was on one such night, as snowflakes drifted lazily through the air, that Sirius tugged at his mother's sleeve. Can we train? Lyanna looked up from where she was oiling her sword. You've been riding all day, little wolf. Sirius lifted his small practice blade. Then my arms are already warmed up. Wyman, sitting beside the fire, raised an amused brow. You train the boy yourself? Lyanna rose, drawing her sword from its sheath. The steel gleamed red in the firelight. Of course, who else should teach him to fight for what's his? Gods preserve us, Wyman muttered, settling his fur cloak tighter. This I've got to see. Steel rang against steel. Sirius darted forward, his strikes light but quick, his movements fluid. Lyanna parried each blow effortlessly, though her eyes softened with pride. Better, she said, but your stance is still too open. You'd lose your footing on ice. I won't, he said, adjusting. Watch. He feinted left, spun, and aimed for her leg. She stepped aside, turned her wrist, and disarmed him in one smooth motion. The sword clattered into the snow. Sirius blinked up at her, breathless. Never fight to prove your strength, she told him, lowering her blade. Fight to protect what matters. He grinned, eyes bright. Then next time, I'll protect my sword. Wyman's deep laughter echoed across the camp. By the 7, he's got your fire, my lady. Lyanna allowed herself a small smile. You are saying that because you haven't met his father. The next night, 5 of Wyman's best soldiers, men who had fought pirates and wildlings, came forward, armor glinting in the firelight. If it pleases you, my lady, one said, bowing, we'd be honored to test our skill against the Queen of Narnia herself. Lyanna only nodded. Stepping into the ring of snow the men cleared for her. Her blade sang as she drew it. Very well, she said. Come at me as if you mean it, else it's not worth doing. The first man lunged, and she sidestepped, knocking his sword aside and striking him lightly on the chest with the flat of her blade. He fell back, gasping. The second tried to flank her. She spun, parried, and caught his wrist, twisting his weapon away. The third came in from behind, too slow. She turned, her braid whipping across her shoulder, and kicked his legs from under him. The last 2 circled her warily. One swung high, she ducked. The other aimed low. She leapt aside, slashing his belt clean in half. In less than half a minute, 5 men were down in the snow. Sirius clapped from the sidelines, grinning wide. You missed one, Lyanna laughed. Did I? She turned, tossed her sword lightly, and caught it again. Its tip resting an inch from the last man's throat before he even realized she'd moved. Wyman's mouth fell open. Gods be good, he muttered. You could lead an army yourself. Lyanna sheathed her blade. I already do. Later, as the camp quieted, Sirius sat near the fire, sharpening his small sword while the Manderley men whispered in awe. Did you see her move? One murmured. Like the wind itself. They say her husband killed Roose Bolton and beat up all the Bolton guards. Another whispered. If that's true, then the North is blessed to have them both. Said a third, shaking his head. But I wouldn't want to be the poor fool who makes her angry. Wyman watched her from across the fire, a mug of ale in hand. Your mother's a fierce one, lad. Sirius looked up, smiling. Father says she's fiercer when she's angry. The old lord chuckled deeply. 7 hells. Then may the gods keep your father safe. They rode on through frozen rivers and silent forests, and by the 5th day, the spires of Winterfell rose in the distance. Gray against the horizon, ancient as the snow itself. Lyanna drew her fur cloak tighter, her heart pounding with something between joy and sorrow. She could already feel the pull of home. Sirius followed her gaze. That's it, isn't it? He said softly. Yes, Lyanna murmured. That's home. And behind them, the soldiers and skin-changers rode on in silence, for even hardened men could sense that this was no ordinary return. It was a legend coming home. The Queen of Narnia, riding north on a direwolf, her son at her side, to a house that had thought her lost forever.